Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Slip Safety Show. My name is Christian Harris and I'm the host of the show and I'm the founder of Slip Safety Services. The show is designed for people just like myself and you, people who care passionately about the world being a safer, cleaner and more hygienic place. And today's guest knows all about that and many other things. He specialises in the retention of members in health clubs, where all of those factors play a very important role, and particularly at the moment, given everything that's going on with the coronavirus and people who are going to be returning to these types of clubs are going to be much more interested and paranoid and perhaps even fearful about cleanliness and hygiene going forward. My guest today is Paul Bedford. He's the retention guru. He's really well known in the world of health and fitness. He speaks at conferences all around the world. He authors lots of articles. He does lots of other content, and delighted really to get Paul on the show today to share some of his experience, expertise and insights with you. No doubt some of the lessons here will be relevant to you whether or not you operate health clubs or gyms, because the principles of customer experience and retention are to some extent pretty universal. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I certainly did. If you do, please give us a subscribe, because that would be very much appreciated, and I'd also appreciate if you think this could be of value to anybody that you know. If you could ask them to watch or listen, depending on which medium you're using to engage with the content. So without further ado, let's go on with it. Paul Bedford, welcome to the Slip Safety Show.
Thank you very much, sir.
It's great to have you here on a nice sunny day, both of us in South London.
Yeah, whereabouts are you?
I live near a place called Honor Oak Park, which is near Forest Hill.
Yeah, I know that.
Because you're sort of Croydon way, aren't you, or Purley way?
Yeah, I'm south. Yeah, originally South Croydon, but now you class me as Croydon because
Right,
I
okay.
live closer to the centre of the town. But
okay, so you probably, if you're on the train, if you're going on the train then to London Bridge, you'd come through my station.
Yes.
Whether
yes,
or not you stopped, whether or not you
Never.
stopped is another question.
Never, ever, ever, ever.
It's nice. My closest centre is Forest Hill Pools, which is a fusion centre.
Right.
And then we've got Dulwich. There's an Everyone Active. There's Dulwich College Sports Centre, which is quite close. There's Jags. There's various other ones. It's quite a.
I know Jags. I've done some work at Jags in the past. That's a nice centre. Really nice centre.
Yeah, I've been there for a couple of birthday parties. I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, so
okay.
Doing all the rounds in these various leisure locations for birthday parties, which is good fun. So I imagine a lot of the audience would know who you are and what you do, but do you want to just give a quick overview for those that haven't heard of you?
All right. So technically, I'm Dr. Paul Bedford. I have a PhD in behavioural psychology applied to fitness and leisure environments. I run a business called Retention Guru, which in its basic sense helps operators keep their customers for longer. And we provide that service globally to big multinational businesses right the way down to, I work with a small boxing club here in South London, Purley ABC. So we work with all types of operators, just helping them trying to keep their customers for longer.
Yeah, because when I first heard that, what the sort of attrition rates were, I was quite shocked, that they were so high.
Yeah. Well, the industry was built on sales, and sales is really easy to measure because you can measure it daily, and you can measure attrition daily. I have a real big bugbear about the way the industry measures it, and we don't measure it the way the industry measures it. And I think that's actually been to our benefit because we have changed things. We use all academic measures, and the measure of attrition based on percentage, I don't think has any value. And I say that to my customers, and after about a week, they go, oh my God, I don't know why we continue to do it that way. And then they stop, and then we have major improvements. So,
Yeah.
but the industry was built on sales, and when there were more customers than there were clubs, who cared about them leaving?
Yeah.
That was the attitude. So,
yeah. Whereas a bit different now, with lots more competition and different segments of the market trying to nick customers off each other and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Well, I've got a client who we started a project just over 2 years ago, and they, we did what's called a cultural change program as well as a retention strategy program throughout their business. And in the 2 years that they've been open, they have had 11 competitors open around their facilities.
Wow.
So they've got facilities spread out. So you can imagine there's 2 or 3 around each of their facilities. Now, based on their forecasting, they expected to lose a total of 4,500 customers. And we're currently plus 78, which isn't great in terms of if you just said, we've done a 2-year project and we're plus 78 customers. But actually, if they're forecast to lose 4,500, and they're plus 78, we've done a pretty good job. So, yeah, the market has been a lot more competitive. The current situation will create a lot of problems for a lot of operators, big, small, private, independent, public. It's going to be a challenge for everyone.
Yeah, and in most sectors, it's much cheaper and theoretically easier to maintain a customer than it is to win a whole new customer. So I assume that must be the same in leisure as well.
Yeah, it is. And I think what's interesting is you see numbers get bandied about all the time and infographics and stuff. And if you chase down those numbers, there's very few numbers that are actually based on service. Most of those numbers are based on products. So if you read the thing that says, it's 7, you get 5%. If you improve in retention by 5%, you get a 28% improvement. That's based on product sales, not based on services like a SaaS type model where you've got a reoccurring payment. But it is, what you have to take into account is whatever your business is, there's a cost to running that business, and you have to work out. We've done some economic modeling with some economists. What's the cost of acquisition? What's the cost of running your business as a business? And then what's the cost of trying to retain those customers? And it's a small amount of money compared to the actual initial getting the customer. But you have to have both. You've got to get customers to keep customers.
Yeah, because you're never going to keep 100% of your customers. So if you want to be growing, you need to be adding people in at the top as well. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to try and analyse. It's a bit like we obviously do a lot of work in the kind of insurance and risk management world, and it's thinking about what's the true cost of an accident and an insurance claim, because it comes out of different budgets and it's quite hard to pin it down. But you need to think about not just framing it in terms of like, okay, it's a health club. 10 grand is the cost. Well, that equates to X membership sales. Well, it's not actually correct, because you need to think about the profit margin, not the sales value. Yeah,
there's the fixed cost and the variable costs, and I spent some time last week talking to an economist about social value scores and how you calculate them. And he's a health economist, and he's like, what's the impact of putting a leisure centre into a town and the value that would generate in terms of the reduction in costs to the social care and all those things. And he said, even again, there are so many variables, it's really hard to pin down. So even when you do produce a figure, you've got half a group will go, great, we believe it. And the other half, even academics, will just go, yeah, but you haven't thought about this, and you haven't thought about this, and you haven't thought about this. So, measuring the effect of behaviours is really complex.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Very, very fascinating subject. So we're in week 4, I think it is, right now, of the lockdown as we're recording this. So what have you seen in terms of the journey that operators have gone on from, before the lockdown, sort of potentially panicking or not knowing what to do, through to, okay, how do we deal with this, through to now? Are they now sort of at the point where they're looking forward, or do you still sense that there's worry or confusion out there?
I think it's interesting because obviously, because I work globally, you've got different countries in different parts of a process, but each country is also dealing with it differently. I think initially, I was suggesting, I put a video out a few weeks ago saying, this is what to expect. First, there'll be a decrease in visit frequency. Then we'll move into the sort of dropping off really substantially, and then we'll be into a lockdown phase. Things that I'm seeing the spectrum. I've seen some operators who are saying they've got their reopening plan detailed. They know what they're doing. They know how they're going to do it. And then I've got others, that I've spoken to even today that have just gone, oh, we haven't got there yet, because they've been so busy. I think a lot of the operators I have spoken to, for at least 2 weeks, they were busier day to day than their business and what their business is going to look like during these phases. So bringing on board remote training, digital training, whether they're going to freeze everybody's memberships, whether they're going to ask customers to carry on paying if they can. Each business is looking at this in a slightly different format. I do think now the majority of operators are getting to that point where they go, we've got the lockdown phase controlled. What we don't know now is the time period that this is going to be in lockdown. And there's all the speculation around what will reopening look like. Will it be, social distancing in group X? Will there be social distancing in the gym? Now, I know people have complained, groups of people have complained about overcrowding in gyms at certain times. And there have been a lot of operators who have been able to, what I would describe as oversell memberships.
Yeah.
My question is, would they be able to continue doing that going forward? And if you look at some of the financial modelling, if you're a low-cost operator and your business exists on having huge volumes of customer, then you will need to rethink, because you can't have dormant customers, and you can't probably afford to charge that low-cost amount of money. It's like, if we can only have 100 people in the facility at a time compared to 300, what have we now got to charge? So I think there'll be some work to do there. There's operators who don't have the infrastructure to digitally control access in terms of booking. I used an example with a client recently of, you'd have to treat it a bit almost like swimming pool sessions. Rubber band, 8 till 9, blue bands, 9 till 10, yellow bands, 9 o'clock, everybody out, clean down the facility, then the next group in. So you get an hour to train. Now, some of them have been thinking about doing that, but he's like, well, physically, we don't have a booking system that would allow for that. So people would have to turn up and wait. And then what do you do if 150 people turn up? And they're like, well, I don't want to wait.
And particularly if you've got something like in a city centre, in London, for example, where it's all people office based that all finish work at 6 and they want to be in the gym at 6:30.
Yeah.
Great massive issues there, aren't you?
Yeah. And then again, you've got operators who, particularly in the public sector, who've been very successful at attracting an older market. And that older market, and maybe the group, while the clubs might operate, the facilities might operate, they may not choose to come back because they're in a lockdown. They're being told, stay at home, don't exercise, don't venture out. Yet they could be the largest proportion of the customers a business has. It's
very.
You could pick any element of it and come up with probably 3 to 5 different scenarios of how it's going to impact the industry. So I do think, as I said, I think a lot of people are trying to be the leader at the moment. But I don't know what they're leading us to. I don't think they know what they're leading us to either.
Yeah, I suppose it's incomplete information everywhere, and you've just got to try and get your best guess, haven't you?
Yeah, and when I'm working with clients, we've done situational planning, going, if you can't open with group X, what are you going to do? If you can open with group X and it looks like this, what are you going to do? There's assumptions as well that all the staff will be able to come back on board and all the customers will come back at the same time. It might be phased openings. You might have you still might be running the risk of 20% of your staff being off from possibly getting sick or self-isolation.
Yeah.
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 I wish I could just go, it's going to be this. I don't think I can.
So what should people be doing then? Just really trying to get into the detail of scenario planning and thinking through all of these different potential scenarios?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's about getting into, it's not just the planning of the strategies, it is the detail. So I've been describing what I consider to be 3 types of customers. And I haven't got proper names for those customers at the moment. But I think there's one type of customer coming back who I'm going to refer to now as the superhero. They don't believe they're ever going to get coronavirus. They don't think it would affect them if they did. And they're actually going to be quite gung-ho in their attitude when coming back in. And if you've put in rules about social distancing, about cleaning, those types of things, they might just try and ignore those. They might just try and ignore those. Then you'll have a group that I think are in the middle that they're conscious, but they're careful. So they're coming in, they're going to abide by the rules. They want to know what your rules are. But they'll be watching how staff behave towards the gung-ho ones.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not cleaning, why aren't you checking on that person cleaning? Why aren't you doing this? They're going to be really conscious that you've said, this is our new clean approach. And they're like, but you're not enforcing it.
Yeah.
So there'll be that battle. Then I think you'll have the hyper-vigilant who, I don't think they'll come back quickly, but when they come back, they'll come back, I'm going to make a joke of it, but they're going to come back in hazmat suits.
Yeah.
They're going to come back with masks on. They're going to bring their own antibacterials, their own cleaning stuff, because they may not believe that the operator, whatever the operator's set, they're going to go above that in their own behavior.
Yeah.
So I think it's about, for operators, it's about training staff. What do we say to the gung-ho customer who isn't abiding by the rules? What is our strategy there? What are the types of conversations? What are they going to say? What are we going to say? It's that granular rather than going, we've got a new cleaning procedure.
Yeah, it's all about communication. I don't know if you've been watching, but there's been some really good webinars by Club Solutions magazine with a few of the operators from the States. And a lot of what they've been talking about is communication, whether it's cleaning, whether it's what you're doing about your fees and freezing them or not, what you're doing about how you're going to open, it's all about trying to over communicate basically and over explain, because otherwise there'll be confusion.
Yeah. And something I've said to all the operators I work with, and even when I did a club industry one in the States, communicate at the same time of day every day. So it's almost, here in the UK, we see the government come on, as way I see it, 5 o'clock in the evening, someone gets on the BBC and they go, this is the information for today. And you only have to watch that. You don't have to watch any other news, and that ties it up. I'm saying to club operators, communicate at the same time each day so that customers get used to you sharing information at the same time, rather than it being on an ad hoc basis. And just be mindful that everybody's trying to communicate at the moment. I've heard from companies that I didn't even know I was signed up to. Their chief execs sending me an email going, at this time. And I'm like, I didn't even know I was on your mailing list. So everybody's trying to do that. And again, I think when we do start to reopen, we're going to get that again. We're going to get everybody communicating full on. Yeah.
And you're very good. You practice what you preach, because you, on your LinkedIn posts every day, it's lunchtime lessons, which is always very good. So,
Well, and with lunchtime lessons, we myself, my sister works for me, and she manages a lot of that content for me. We sat down and we had a discussion at the beginning of this. Are we going to adapt the lunchtime lessons to the current situation? And interestingly, I've adapted one, which was one I did a couple of weeks ago, where I said, when this is over, it's going to be the biggest pre-sale the industry's ever seen. And then, that's the only one we've adapted. Interestingly, I write them in batches, and we've got a few lined up to go. It's just the environment we're in, people are reading them in the context of the current environment. But they were written in an environment where clubs were open. But we do that. In terms of our lunchtime lessons, we communicate same day, well, Monday to Friday, just after 1 o'clock, every time.
And that opens an interesting question, which is, to what extent do you think that, you know, in the new world, the kind of timeless principles of retention that you've been espousing over the years will change, or do you think actually the basics will remain, but there'll be just a few changes around the edges?
I think the principles will be the same. I think some of the behaviours might have to be different. So, you know, the principles of interacting with customers. You know, as you said, everybody's going at the moment, you got to communicate, you got to communicate, you got to communicate. In the past, that communication was just sales communication. You know, buy. Now it's like, we've actually got to communicate information. So I don't think the principles will change at all. I think the way in which our businesses run will change. And I'm going to speculate here. I think they will change for a while. I think we will see some permanent changes, but I also think we'll see a lot of the things that people do initially move back towards the center. I've described it as a pendulum, and I said at the moment we've swung way out over here, and when we come back, it will swing back past.
Yeah.
And then we'll settle somewhere close to where we were before, because actually, you know, changing behaviours is actually really hard.
It's very difficult, yeah.
And rapid behaviour change doesn't stick.
No. I think that's kind of what I anticipate on cleanliness. I think that we're going to go from, you know, pretty poor through to, you know, it being critically important. And then after, you know, 12, 18, 24 months, it'll start to come. But I'm kind of hopeful that it won't go all the way back to where it was. It might just settle on something that's a bit better than what we had before.
And I think if you look at, and it's in some ways it's comparable, in other ways it's not. But if you look at the global economic downturn of the mid-2000s, you know, banking behaviour took us into a crisis. You know, 12 months after, if you look, you know, there were legislation in to stop some of the behaviours, but you know, the banking people that I know were saying, actually, we're pretty much back to where we were.
Yeah.
You know, we just swung back. We've got beyond that. We've moved on. And I agree with you. I hope that they're cleaner. I've got one client who has always done deep clean every night. You know, they have a team come in and deep clean. They have the finances to do it. They deep clean every night. And I said, do you tell your customers that? And they went, no, we've never really bothered sharing it, but we're going to now.
Because it's normal for them, it's normal for them. Just as in most places, unfortunately, it's normal to not do much cleaning.
Yeah. So tough.
But I think promoting and communicating that is going to be critical going forward. So I've got a quote here from somebody, which says, so you might know him. It says, "Cleanliness remains one of the most important factors in how members judge the performance of their club, and an area in which many clubs fall down." That was you that said that.
Yeah.
Is that
they do.
Still,
they do. And it's, you know, we see as one of the big predictors of, like, if we map, when we're interviewing customers for you know, we'll do surveys, sometimes we'll do deep data analysis, sometimes we'll do focus groups. When you ask customers about their reasons for quitting, often if you look at the data, they're not visiting as frequently as they were. So their visit frequency's changed. When their visit frequency starts to drop off, one of the things we've noticed is they don't want to blame themselves for it. So they look for reasons in the club. They look to give themselves justifications for quitting. And cleaning is usually an easy one for them to pick up on. They go into the locker rooms. Sometimes they're not as clean as they could be. They go into the showers and they look at the outlet in the shower, and there's a hair in the outlet of the shower, which is quite, they're big commercial businesses, so it's understandable there might be some hair in the shower.
Yeah, of course.
They go away, they come back the next week, they look down, a hair looks like a hair. It's like, oh, they haven't cleaned it. It's still a hair in the shower. They don't clean it. Now I've got a reason to quit. You know, we'd all like to work out in an immaculate environment, but you've still got, I say that, and then I'm going to contradict myself. You've still got people who go, actually, I want a spit and sawdust gym to work out in.
Yeah.
I don't want a hyper. And the idea of it actually if you think about the way the words that are being described, a spit and sawdust. Oh, it's like, actually, if you saw someone spit in your gym, you'd be horrified. But people do want a pleasant environment to work out in.
Mm. Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the challenges as well around cleanliness and that member perception piece is actually that quite often there are maintenance issues. It's not actually cleanliness, it's a maintenance issue. And people, because they don't really know, they kind of think, oh, it's cleanliness. And so, you know, getting down into the detail, as you said earlier, is really important in these things, I think.
I did some work, it was a number of years ago now. We did some work with what was originally the Reebok Club in Canary Wharf, which is now Third Space. Now they have about 7,500 customers, and they have about 4,500 customer visits per day. So you can imagine at their peak times, the club is heaving, but so are the locker rooms and the shower cubicles. One of the customers there, who we interviewed, said, she goes, I don't think the showers here are that clean. Now, I've been to that club a lot, and I think they do an amazing job based on the volume of customers. And I said, well, what would be a level of clean that you would expect? And she said, the showers aren't as clean as the shower I have at home, which my head went, yeah, but you don't have 4,500 people go through your shower in a day. And she said, I'd expect them to clean it after every person uses it. And I'm like, I've been in there and trained at lunchtime when it's busy. And in the men's locker room, there are men queuing with towels around their waists, waiting to go into the shower, waiting for a shower to be empty because of the volume of showers relative to the size of the customer base. And I just thought, that's such an unrealistic expectation.
Yeah.
But that's where she was. She was at that end of, they should clean it after every person uses it. And we might be going into a phase where people expect that now.
Potentially, although I think that is a bit overburdensome, isn't it? But there's an interesting point there as well about the kind of methodologies of cleaning, because I think one of the challenges that I see, not just in leisure but in other sectors, is if you say to people, if you stopped 100 people on a high street, well, you wouldn't find 100 people now, but if you stopped 100 people on a high street and said, oh, how do you clean a floor? They'd say, well, with a mop and a bucket, because that's what they do at home. And actually that can work at home because, as you say, you've only got 1, 2, 3, 4 people walking over it on any day. But if you try and have a textured sort of slip resistant floor in a shower in a club with 4,500 members a day, you can't clean it the same way. And I think so there's an interesting parallel there that is worth exploring, you know, with people when, again, getting down into the detail of things.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've seen, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a video that was an advert that Delta have done, Delta Airlines in the States, and it's called Delta Clean. And they've got the chief exec, is it the chief exec? Or they've got one of their senior team come on screen and say, we have a new expectation of cleaning now in our business. This is what you can expect to see. And they show them cleaning the aircraft. I think companies need to be making those videos.
Yeah.
And explaining what you've just said, you know, we can't clean this in the same way you do it at home. So we have to use this, and we have to use this, and we have to use this.
Yeah, I think that's an opportunity.
Dry times, and you know it better than me, but you've got drying times, and
I think your client that you mentioned that does out of hours cleaning, that's got to be part of the mix here going forward, because what most clubs have is people there during the day, whether they're outsourced cleaning staff or whether they're in-house people, trying to kind of clean during the day. And you can't really do proper cleaning during the day. You're effectively serving a kind of janitorial role. And interestingly, you're also potentially serving a customer experience role, because you're a customer facing person and you can be helpful and positive and all that stuff. So there's an added value there, but you can't really, you can't really clean showers during the day when the club's open properly. So you need to think about, well, how can we do that out of hours in some way, whether that's every day or periodically or something like that. I think that's something that, people need to.
Sorry, Christian. I noticed recently I went to an operator and they'd made all of their showers multigender. And they had locker rooms and it was configured really well. And when I said to them what was their reason for it, they went, it means we can clean them more frequently because we don't have to have a male cleaner or a female cleaner as appropriate for the locker room. We can just clean in and around. But I also know of a slightly different example. A friend of mine who was running a very large premium operated facility here in the UK. And he had cleaners that cleaned at night, and they were outsourced by the bigger company. So he wasn't his choice, but he moved them from cleaning at night to cleaning during the day. So because they were so rubbish at cleaning at night, he said he didn't think they'd clean better in the day, but at least the customers would see someone cleaning.
Yeah. And all these things are a balance. I think the biggest challenge is that historically the budget for cleaning has been set based on some sort of parameter of how profitable the club was in the prior year, not actually looking at, well, we've got 5,000 square feet, and to clean 5,000 square feet properly needs this much time and this much chemical and this much blah, 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 and actually looking at it kind of scientifically. So I think there's trying to get that balance is going to be interesting, because I think lots of the budgets are sort of, pretty much far too low at the moment for what I believe the expectation will be coming out of this.
I don't know, like, it's been a while since I've run a club, but the last club that I ran, we had our resistance machines were black, and the way in which they were configured in the gym, that when the sun came up in the morning, it filled the gym area with sunlight. But the problem was, no matter how well you clean, the machines looked dirty just because of the sunlight on the equipment, because it was black. As soon as the sun got behind higher than the window height, so it wasn't coming directly in, the club looked clean.
Yeah.
But when the sunlight was down, it was like, oh. And I'd be constantly saying to me, we haven't cleaned them. We've just finished cleaning them.
Yeah.
But, it's that, the low winter sun they hated.
Yeah.
They said, the gym just looks dirty all the time, and we're cleaning.
Not fun when you're driving either.
No.
So, so it sounds like you think going forward that cleanliness is going to be more important than ever. Is that fair? Yeah.
Yeah. My concern is not the cleanliness; it's that people's jobs. How do I say this? Many of the operators I work with still have fitness staff, fitness instructors. Now, part of some of their role has always been cleaning. It's making sure that we don't lose the impact of the fitness staff doing the fitness part of their role to a cleaning role.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's this balance. Because everyone wants everything to be clean, but at the same time, you still need the fitness people to be doing the fitness job. And I think some of that will be hijacked, is probably too strong a word, but at least initially it's like, oh, I know you thought you were level 3 NVQ PT. Well, now you're a cleaner.
Yeah.
Because we need to see you cleaning. And that becomes the priority, rather than the other issues around looking after the customer and making sure the customer's on track to achieve their goals.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's about rethinking how this is done. It's similar to lifeguards, isn't it? Lifeguards, the difference with a lifeguard is you can't pull the lifeguard away. They've got to sit there and do their core job. So it's going to be about actually figuring out a way of adding to what they're doing somehow, whether that's extra resources or whatever it might be. But you can't have your fitness instructors being full-time cleaners, because then they're not going to be doing what they need to be doing. So
and that will demotivate them really, really quickly, because it's like, well, I trained for this and now I've got to do this. And I think everybody I've ever managed, or even when I was a fitness instructor, I knew part of my role was cleaning, but I didn't want it to be my role, because if that was my role, why did I bother going and doing all my qualifications, and what's the point?
Yeah.
So I think managing staff morale is going to be really important around that.
Yeah. And again, back to communication then, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's funny how everything.
Can I ask you a question?
Diverges. Yeah, of course.
So I don't necessarily need product names or anything like this. On cleaning cardiovascular equipment, so when I was a manager of a facility, it was always the guidelines from the equipment operators were damp cloth, wipe it down.
Yeah.
I am aware, and I don't know if this is true or urban myth, but there was a story one time of a cleaning team coming in using really strong detergents, wiping down the screens on the cardio equipment and taking off all the decals
Damaging
of
it.
start, stop, and things like that. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. Is there anything that operators need to avoid cleaning their equipment with, or things they have to think about? Because I'd like to share that with my clients in terms of whatever you do, don't put this on your cardio screen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the challenges in cleaning is that the suppliers of a surface, whatever that surface is, whether it's a cardiovascular machine or a tile or a carpet or a desk or whatever, they tend to give you some cleaning advice, but they do that in a totally de-risked way. So they're going to tell you the absolute bare minimum to do that they know won't cause any damage. So, you know, a damp cloth isn't going to cause any damage. But actually, is that really going to clean that surface properly over time? Probably not. But then they don't want to go down the sort of high spec end of, you know, use this particular chemical and this method, because they know that in the real world these things don't happen. So I think it's looking at, you know, stuff again in a bit more detail, thinking about, well, what's the contamination and what's the surface? They're the two key things, and I suppose how frequent you're going to clean it. So if it's body fats, you know, you need something that's designed to remove body fats. You need something that's not very acidic or very alkaline, and you don't want to use anything that's too abrasive to scrub it with. And the more frequently you clean it, the easier it's going to be, because it stops building up. So it's thinking about trying to balance out all of that stuff. You probably find in that specific case, you know, there'll be a few products out there which you could use that are sort of relatively neutral when diluted, designed to remove body fats, will probably disinfect as well, so a kind of cleaner sanitizer could be used with like a microfiber cloth or something. And again, it's if you stay on top of it, it should be straightforward. It's when things are allowed to kind of lapse, and then you're into the realms of doing a kind of a proper deep clean, and that's when potentially you need a bit more specialist help, if that makes sense.
Okay, cool, thank you.
It's all right, pleasure. Always happy to help. We can do a Twitter Q&A of cleaning questions in the future if that's of use. Great. Well, conscious of time, is there anything else, any key messages that you think would be useful for the audience to get from you before we wrap things up?
I don't think there is anything I want to add to what I already said. I do just reiterate this thing of making sure that when we bring our staff back on board, we've thought through these different actual actions in terms of, if people are gung-ho, how are we going to behave? If they are, conscious and critical, what are we going to do to reassure them? And again, with the hypersensitive ones or the hypercritical ones, what are we going to do to reassure them? But also, what messages are we going to tell them about them bringing their own cleaning products? Because as you said, they might go, well, I don't think it's clean enough, and out comes a sponge that's got an abrasive surface with something, and then they decide they're going to clean the equipment. I think setting those rules and those boundaries are going to be really important.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, thanks very much, Paul. How can people get hold of you and follow you and all that good stuff?
Okay, so we mentioned during this session that every day we do lunchtime lessons. So it's just # lunchtime lessons. We do those on Instagram, Facebook. LinkedIn is our preferred platform because that's where we connect with most people. And we do them on Twitter. So we put out content Monday to Friday. I think we do it 50 weeks of the year. I should know. Let's say it's 50 weeks of the year. If people want to see videos or content that we've created, if they could just go to retentionguru.com, there's lots of free content on there. I think there's 25 videos of me speaking at conferences and doing workshops, and there's blog posts and there's other stuff. And if they want to get in touch with me directly, it's really simple. It's paul@retentionguru.co.uk. And if people have got questions about staff training, staff behaviour, improving the retention of their customers, more than happy to help. As I said earlier on, we've worked with the likes of Anytime Fitness in 17 countries, Gold's Gym right across the world, and we work with lots of leisure centres and public sector here. So we've got experience over the last 23 years of pretty much everything that's likely to happen, apart from a global pandemic.
Exactly. And you were telling me before we started recording, actually, which we should just touch on, is you've now started doing more, as we all have, more sort of Zoom stuff and remote things. So you can be helping people now, even though you can't necessarily go and see them.
Well, I've been using Zoom probably for about almost its inception. So I used to use GoToWebinar and GoToMeetings and things like that, and then Zoom came out. And I had a lot of people would say to me or contact me, could you come for a meeting? And I go, where are you? Oh, we're Pembrokeshire and I'm in London. And I'm like, yeah, but if I'm going to come to Pembrokeshire, I'm going to have to charge you for a day, because I'm not driving 5 hours to do a 1 hour meeting to drive back. Why don't we just do a Zoom call? And people panicked. It's like, a Zoom call? What's a Zoom call? And I'd explain it and they go, oh, I'm not sure that's really the same.
Yeah.
One of the big things about this is now I'm saying to people, do you want to jump on the Zoom call? And no one bats an eyelid.
Yeah.
Or the only restriction is our IT department won't allow Zoom. Can we go on Microsoft Teams or...
Yeah.
And yeah, we're doing a lot of projects at the moment with operators globally, just doing things digitally. So, you know, did one last week in Los Angeles, doing one this week for in the northeast of England. And we're just getting on with it. So yeah, I think life's going to change a bit, but I still like going and visiting people. I like to actually see them and meet them face to face.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Makes sense. Great. Well, Paul, thanks very much, and we will we'll look forward to doing some Twitter cleaning Q&As, as we said.
Yeah, definitely.
Cheers.
Cheers, sir.